What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Monday, July 22nd, 2019, getting toward the end of the month here. Getting closer and closer to our move date here. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and observations. And, of course, this last weekend we had our second of our planned yard sales. It was an epic fail. Hardly anybody showed up. Nobody has money to spend. So we're not going to bother with the third one. That means I just got to start giving stuff away and get it out of here before the movers show up here. We're under a strict weight limit, and if we go over that weight limit, it's going to cost us a huge amount of money. So we're trying to stay slim, as it were. All right, so Saturday, obviously, was the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing on the moon, and a lot of TV shows about that. They were showing First Man. HBO was stripping their miniseries From the Earth to the Moon that was produced by Tom Hanks. And so it was kind of reliving that era when America truly was the greatest nation on earth, at least in science and technology. And before we start getting phone calls screaming about how it was all faked, there's a story here from, let's see, from Daily Mail, reminding us all that the artifacts left on the surface of the moon by the Apollo crews are still there, and they are still visible to orbiting satellites, not all of which are owned by countries that are friendly to us. As far as the flag is concerned, actually it was kind of an open secret inside NASA. The flag got blown over on the launch. For the longest time, NASA was trying to keep that away, and that's why there's no footage of the first few moments of the ascent. And the official story was Buzz Aldrin forgot to turn that camera on until after the launch, but the reality was that camera showed the flag being blown over, and everybody got really upset about it. Now, the flags at the other landing sites are still standing, but they have, after all these years, been bleached totally white. They were not designed to last that long. They weren't space tech. In fact, they were bought right off, the shelf of the local flag store, and they cost like about $6. So, travel going. So, anyway, it was a grand achievement. It captured the imagination of America for the most part. And here we are 50 years later, and everybody is still trying to make political hay on this. The feminists are out there saying, well, Apollo was just this white male-dominated, adventure. And, of course, people of color and women were sent into space by the United States later on, just not for Apollo. The honor of being the first woman into space, of course, goes to Russia, who sent Valentina Tereshkova into orbit. So that was one of the Soviet firsts, as it were, here. Now, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he's an astrophysicist, he's a TV host, and every once in a while he comes up with a gaffe on social media. And in response to the anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted out a globalist message meant to reduce America's achievement 50 years ago to a human achievement free of any nationalist pride. And what he tweeted out was, look at the Apollo 11 mission patch, no American flag, no space hardware, no astronaut names. And in that regard, unique among space emblems, affirmation that walking on the moon was an achievement of the human species to be shared by all. Now, that was also the message that was on the plaque on the front of Apollo 11. We came in peace for all mankind. But it was an American achievement, and that's why that eagle is there. Now, the flight crew of Apollo 11 basically said, yeah, we don't want to junk it up. We're not going to put our names on there. And it is a very simple and elegant patch. Alrighty, so let's get on to our domestic news here. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein wanted his little Caribbean island to be up to date with communications and Wi-Fi, and he hired an IT consultant, Steve Scully. And apparently, Steve Scully was so weirded out by the place that eventually he basically canceled the contract. And the two things that he was bothered about was the large number of unsupervised underage girls on the island, and the various the obvious implication why they were there. And apparently there were photos of topless women displayed throughout the island's compounds. And that may be a little bit over the top and a little bit tacky, and it may make it look like a bordello. I mean, I got to go up to the Playboy Mansion a couple of times when I was living in and working in Hollywood, and it was very tasteful. There might be one or two nude paintings, but I'll remember the very first time I walked in there, there was this painting by Salvador Dali. And the painting is called The Virgin Sodomized by Her Own Chastity. And of course, if you've taken an art history class, you know what the painting is. And then to walk on in and just see it, the real thing hanging there, that impressed me more than anything else I saw up there. And I'm sorry to hear that the place is falling into disrepair and will probably soon be sold and either extensively renovated or just knocked out and start over. Okay, we're going to do a shout out now to our Honor affiliates who just now rejoined our network. As more and more people look into Jeff Epstein's behavior, more details are surfacing. Apparently, Ghislaine Maxwell was the one who connected Bill Clinton to Jeff Epstein. And apparently, Ghislaine Maxwell is also a close friend of former First Daughter Chelsea. That's just now coming on out. I understand that Chelsea is showing and is about to have a child, so congratulations on that one. So, another another story that's surfaced out. This is Wall Street on Parade. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein chaired a $6.7 billion company, and allegations have surfaced that he needed and received a secret Federal Reserve bailout. So apparently, Epstein set up this company called Liquid Funding Limited. It was incorporated in Bermuda. And according to the Fitch ratings firm, it had $6.7 billion in outstanding liabilities in 2006. So that certainly puts the lie to Epstein being some kind of a sharp businessman, because that's a lot of money to go through in 6 years' time. So according to regulatory filings with the Securities Exchange Commission, apparently Epstein resigned from the firm under murky circumstances. And Bear Stearns confirmed it was a 40% owner of Liquid Funding. A lot of money floating around there. Okay, something that we need to go back and remember. When Epstein got out of Palm Beach County Jail in 2009, after serving 13 months of an 18-month sentence, he decided he was going to remake his image. And I guess he got some PR people who started throwing all of these articles at the corporate media, describing him as a selfless and forward-thinking philanthropist with an interest in science. And it got picked up and published by Forbes, National Review, and the Huffington Post, none of which mentioned his prior criminal conviction. They were just in the business of helping him polish up his image. So the Forbes article, which was posted in 2013, praised him as one of the largest backers of cutting-edge science around the world, and didn't mention anything about underage girls or Palm Beach County Jail. The National Review piece same year called him a smart businessman with a passion for cutting-edge science. The Huffington Post article from just back in 2017 credited Jeff Epstein for taking action to help a number of scientists thrive during the Trump era, a time of anti-science article. And in it, he describes visiting Jeff Epstein's New York mansion on East 71st Street. And he said it was a very odd experience. And he said he's had lots of odd experiences from covering intelligence affairs for decades. But the oddest experience of all, he was invited to lunch in New York City by Jeff Epstein. And apparently after he walked inside the entrance, a butler approached him and said, "Would you like an intimate massage, sir, by a pretty girl?" And Margolis turned it down. It just seemed so out of place and weird. So, I mean, when you have the butler offering it, you know, an intimate massage, we know what that means. Okay, it has now come on out that Google executives funded CrowdStrike, the so-called experts behind the Russians hacked the DNC story. And, I mean, Google wanted Hillary to win. When she lost, I mean, they were literally crying in their offices at Google, crying like children. So there was panic and dismay, and apparently they were just determined to thwart both the Trump agenda and the broader populist movement emerging around the globe. So they set up this CrowdStrike, which was basically a propaganda front to push the Russian hacking story. Okay. A federal judge last Friday has paused congressional Democrat subpoenas of Trump Organization financial records 10 days before the records were due in a lawsuit over whether President Donald Trump is violating the Constitution. Now, what they're talking about here is the emoluments clause. And that is that when you are in the government, you're not allowed to receive any kind of gifts or money or favors. That's what the term emoluments is kind of a catch-all. Now, you can receive official state-to-state gifts, but they become the property of the government, and after your term in office, they go over to the Smithsonian, or at least most of them do. But the issue is the fact that Trump owns a bunch of hotels, including one in Washington, D.C., and foreign representatives and officials who come to Washington, D.C. will often stay in the Trump Hotel because it is considered one of the best. And the Democrats are screaming, this violates the emolument clause. Now, Trump is already taking all the money that is paid by the guests at this hotel, and he's donating it to charity. The Democrats, they're after him. They are behaving just like children here. Story out of Post News D2. Somebody did a poll, actually Pew Research did a poll, and it showed that most Americans and nearly all Democrats, 91%, are concerned about the heated political rhetoric and whether it could trigger mass violence. And I'm in agreement. I would have answered yes on that one. I'm concerned about that rhetoric. And I think we are headed to violence in the streets of this country, and I don't want to see that. Okay. Article coming out of Russia Insider is asking a very pointed question. Why didn't Robert Mueller investigate the Seth Rich murder? Now, Seth Rich was murdered on July 10th, 2016, almost exactly 3 years ago. 3 years and 12 days. It was a very mystifying murder investigation. The case remains officially unsolved. Rich was killed by a gunshot wound to the torso, according to the medical examiner. Rich's mother specified it was 2 shots to the back. Now, the police are saying it was a botched robbery at something like 4 in the morning. And they're saying it was botched because Seth Rich still had everything with him. He had his wallet, he had his wristwatch, he had his cell phone, had a gold chain around his neck. Nothing was taken. But on the day Seth Rich was murdered, the information flow from inside the DNC computers to WikiLeaks stopped. Alrighty, according to the story, Seth Rich remained alive for 90 minutes after the shooting. Rich's brother described him as being very aware and very talkative to police during that time. Yet the police have released very little information on the case, never disclosing whether Rich described his killers. Then weeks later, the police came on out and said there is no indication that Seth Rich's death is connected to his employment at the DNC. And that's basically where it ended. Cover up. Okay, let's take a phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. Mark, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Mike, I was going to be part of the weekend doing something I hate to do, and listening to some corporate news and corporate talk. Okay. Just to see what's going on with it covering Epstein. Not a word, nothing. Including on my way home this morning, I'd had Sirius XM on and Breitbart was on. The Breitbart show, with
Yes.
Alex Morrow. Nothing. Zero, nada about Epstein. Okay. Now this is what I believe. I believe both. And by the way, I also turn on the left side. On Sirius, you got a left station, and you got the so-called Patriot station on the right. So I turn on left again, zip, zero, nada. So this is what I believe. I believe both sides are scared F-less, okay?
Yes.
Because they know many of them are involved. And this could bring down the entire government, the entire, both parties, the whole works. This could drive and put a heck of a lot of them in prison. If it was up to me, they'd be hanging from the nearest lamppost, but it's not up to me. But that's what I think is going on. On top of that, you mentioned talking about Mueller and why he didn't investigate the Seth Rich case, the Seth Rich murder, by the way, who I believe that he was murdered almost surely by the DNC, had orders from the DNC, probably with Hillary and what's that guy, Podesta.
Yes.
Probably officially did it. Okay, gave the orders. Mueller is dirty as it comes. Mueller was the FBI director when the plea bargain was made with Rich. Now, I was talking to one of my sons about this, and he's trying to excuse Mueller, saying, well, he was the FBI director. He wasn't the federal prosecutor at the time. Well, that might be true, but the FBI has a lot to say about something, especially a director like Mueller, who had been a U.S. attorney, for quite a while before he became an FBI director. So he could have at least said something. He said, hey, what are you doing? You can't be doing something like this. His agents were involved in the investigation, after all, as well as local police. Okay? Said nothing. Zip, zero, nada. This guy is dirty as it comes. And it goes right back to the Bulger case, Whitey Bulger, back in the 1980s. Yes. When he basically served as Bulger's consigliere when he was U.S. Attorney of the Boston area.
Okay, Mark, I got to put you on hold. Don't hang up. We'll come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Here we're talking with Mark in North Carolina. We're talking about all kinds of things that are going on. Robert Mueller and Jeff Epstein.
I forgot to tell you. I forgot to even include this too. I mean, this is so obvious, and I'm sure you know it too, that this is a Mossad operation. And it, because, first of all, you got Giselle Maxwell involved, who was the daughter of the Israeli spy, Robert Maxwell. She probably was Epstein's controller, if I had to guess. And as well as she served as kind of a pimp and whatever else she served as. But the thing is, nobody wants to cover this now, Mike, because, first of all, if this all comes out, that this wasn't a Mossad operation, the support for Israel would finally probably end in this country. they couldn't support it anymore, no matter how much they tried.
Support for Israel is very much in decline right now, even among American Jews. And I don't think we need to have an either-or approach to this. It could be Mossad and CIA working together because they do partner on a lot of projects.
Yeah. That's another thing I wanted to mention about Mueller, how Mueller comes in also. Well, Mueller was in CIA, he was FBI, but it's basically the same thing. You know, the thing is this, with Mueller, if you look at 9/11 and Mossad, okay?
Yeah.
Those Israelis who were really intelligence agents and Mossad intelligence agents were arrested. It was open and shut. They were caught. They had vans with explosives. Ryan Dawson went through the whole thing.
Yes.
You know, probably how the towers, you know, as well as being hit by the planes, that also caused the towers. When people heard other explosions, that was it because the vans were in the garage. Anyway, and Dawson's very good. I mean, he's real. I hope you have him on again. He was great when he was subsidizing for you, substituting for you.
He's probably going to get a few opportunities while we go through this whole move thing.
Okay, and it's so obvious that Mueller was covering up for the Mossad because after, like, I think, 45 days or something like that, lo and behold, these spies, these Israeli agents, were let go.
Yep.
Back to Israel, just like that.
Yep.
They were let go. Okay, and of course Mueller again, FBI director. Also, I understand that Zerkoff, whatever his name, the guy used to be the so-called DHS, and I think he was something in the Justice Department at the time. Cherkoff, yeah, he was involved in that also. So this whole thing smells, Mike. This is dirty, and I'm praying we'll get to the bottom of it, Mike. We have to. This can't go on like this. This country is not going to survive if we keep this keeps on going. We are being controlled by a foreign government.
Yes.
Okay. You want to talk about collusion? It's not Russian collusion. It's collusion with Israel and with Saudi Arabia to a degree also, because they were behind 9/11 also. There's no question about it. This is as well as our own government. And you're right about the CIA also. They probably, I'm sure they knew about Maxwell. I mean, about Epstein.
Yeah.
Because after all, somebody went to Acosta and told them intelligence is behind this. And I'm sure that they didn't tell them which intelligence agency, but I'm sure the CIA did not want this dirtbag put away either. So, I mean, the whole thing smells high heaven, Mike.
Yep.
Something's got to be done. Cannot let this go. People got to stay alert. Thank God this is being covered on the real media, the independent media.
Yep.
It's not being let go. There's really good people investigating this. Lee Stranahan, who's on our fault lines, Sputnik TV. Garland Nixon, his partner. Jake Marfonio is really investigating this hard too, and he's good. He's a bulldog once he gets going. The same thing with Ryan Dawson, and there's others. And also the guy, what's his name, Adam Green.
Yeah.
These are all people investigating this thing thoroughly, and there's more too, I'm sure. This is not, they cannot get away with it. We cannot let them do this, Mike. It has to stop. People need to call some of these talk shows, by the way, some of these corporate talk shows who shill for Israel, shill for Trump, and shill for, on the left, shill for other things, and confront them. Let them, even if they don't, lie to the call screener and say, you want to talk about something else, and then talk about the Epstein thing. I heard Mark Levin give a really vicious attack on so-called anti-Semites, and saying that the Arabs should be thankful to the United States because we're saving them. Oh yeah, because they're people of color, and we're protecting them from their own governments. And he included Syria when after the false flag and the bombing of the Syrian blaming Syria for the chemical attacks.
Yes.
Of course, we blamed also talking about Iraq. This guy is a real. I'll SB, a scum. You know what?
Yep.
This guy is no good. And people think, oh, he's a conservative. He knows the Constitution. He doesn't know the Constitution at all. he's for, he's not for Congress. He
Okay,
thinks,
Mark, I'm sorry, I got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Jim in Illinois. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. I read the Mueller report, and in Volume 1, Robert Mueller does mention the death of Selfridge, and he stated, Mueller stated, Julian Assange believes Selfridge was murdered, and that's why he was giving a $25,000 reward for the murderers of Selfridge. So
Yes.
Mueller does mention it. So he does mention it.
He mentions it, but that's not the same thing as actually carrying out a real investigation.
Oh, I would agree, but why would he mention it then?
Because everybody else was mentioning it at the time, and maybe he felt he needed to at least sort of give a nod in that direction. Again, the official story is there was no connection.
Right, okay. Moving on to the other topic, everyone's talking about Epstein. The person that they should talk about is this guy, George Nader. Are you familiar with him?
No, I'm not.
Okay, he's going to be going on trial on September 30th of this year for child trafficking and child pornography. He is a very, very close friend of well-connected individuals. He visited the White House 4 times. There's a picture of him and Donald Trump together.
Yes.
In fact, in 2018, he was interviewed by Mueller regarding George Nader's. He was at the Trump Tower when Donald Jr. met with the Russian lady. So this guy is well-connected.
Yes, now I remember who this guy is, yeah.
Yeah, so I think he has more information about a lot of people, more so than Epstein.
I'm sure he's got a lot of information on a lot of people, but I don't think we can quantify it. I mean, after all, Epstein was collecting people and taking them into these pedo palaces, which were probably wired with cameras and microphones. So I would say that probably, Epstein sort of cornered the market on compromising information.
Well, that's true. Oh, I guess I should have stated that this guy, Nader, he's well connected in the Middle East. He's been used by people in the Bush administration and also in the Trump administration as far as getting the Arabs and Israelis to sit down and try and talk. And he's been around ever since 1991.
Okay.
In fact, do you remember James Baker, the Secretary of State?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, when Nader was first arrested back in, I think, 1991, James Baker came to his defense.
Okay.
So he's well connected. Yeah, so he's well connected as far as people in the government and also with the people in the Arab nations. So it'll be interesting to find out what happens to him when it comes to his trial.
Yes.
So, well, I'm going to let you go on that note.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to let you go. And I don't know if these two guys, Epstein and Nader, really have that kind of dirt and that kind of clout. How do you deal with that? You can't just let them go. People would be outraged. So I would not be surprised if there was some wet work down the road here a little bit. Okay, not too long ago, in fact, it was back on the 6th of July, the Daily Mail published a set of diplomatic cables authored by the British envoy to Washington, D.C., which were filled with very unflattering descriptions of U.S. President Donald Trump. The ensuing scandal led to the resignation of the envoy, Sir Kim Darroch. And, of course, immediately everybody said, oh, Russia hacked into the cable system and gave the cables to the Daily Mail to poison U.S.-British relations. Actually, it turns out that it was a freelance journalist, Stephen Edginton, 19 years old, was the person who leaked the diplomatic cables. So once again, the Russophobia leads to nowhere. All righty. Apparently, up in Michigan, a little bit of a kerfuffle. Kathy Zhu, she is or was Miss Michigan, and discovered the hard way that we don't really have free speech in this country anymore. The organization Miss World America took away her Miss Michigan title and banned Miss Zhu from further participation in their pageants. The reason? Someone complained that Miss Zhu's posted opinions on social media are offensive, insensitive, and inappropriate. So did she go off on a hateful rant like the squad did about Trump? No, basically she said she was not going to wear a hijab because she was trying to represent all Americans as Miss Michigan. And she was immediately denounced as being Islamophobic. And then she stated that Black Americans kill more Black Americans than do the police. For that, she was denounced as a racist. So if she had donned a hijab, Miss Zhu would have been sort of lumped in with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar and said to be anti-American, which is not a good designation for a beauty queen. So America has lost its thick skin. That's a big problem. No matter what you say, no matter what you do, there's going to be somebody out there that's going to be triggered by it, because being triggered is now an important part of your identity. All right, let's turn to the international news. There's a lot going on over there. Over the weekend, Iran seized a British-flagged tanker, and the Iranian story is that the British tanker hit an Iranian fishing boat because it was out of the proper channel. They're saying that the crew of the tanker ignored the distress call from the fishing boat and then refused a call from the Iranian patrol boats to get back into that safety lane, with apparently the captain of the tanker saying, "I have a right to go wherever I want." Well, that prompted a reaction of multiple patrol boats and a helicopter, which lowered a bunch of people onto the tanker, and it's now under the custody of Iran. And Iran is saying that they can have the tanker and the crew back if they start lifting sanctions. Meanwhile, over in Great Britain, there's a lot of anger. And it isn't that Iran seized the tanker. It's the fact that everybody should have known this was coming because of Britain's seizure of an Iranian vessel near Gibraltar. And that sooner or later, Tehran was going to start responding to this. So Lord West, the former commander of the Royal Navy, said that Britain should not pretend we're surprised by the seizure of a British-flagged tanker by Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. What I find extraordinary is that we knew that the Iranians would try something like this a few days ago, he told Sky News. The British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt has been busy in the past 24 hours trying to deflect blame and criticism from the British government for inflaming tensions in the Persian Gulf. And of course, the way he does that is saying Iran is committing illegal and destabilizing behavior, and not really understanding that it is Great Britain that has engaged in illegal and destabilizing activities on at least 3 occasions, including the seizure by Gibraltar. So everybody is pointing fingers at each other. Iran's envoy in London, Hamid, I can't pronounce it, Baidenishad, yes, basically came on out and said that forces in Britain are seeking to escalate the tensions in the Persian Gulf. well beyond the issue of just the ships. And he went on to say, it's key now for the British government to contain those domestic political forces who want to escalate existing tension between Iran and Great Britain. Well, there sure are a lot of people who want war with Iran, not just in Great Britain here. Last week, the U.S. came on out and made the claim that they had shot down an Iranian drone. And Iran has released video footage from the drone that shows that it got out to the ship, the U.S. warship. It took a look and it flew back. In fact, Iran is saying they suspect the United States accidentally shot down one of its own drones. But everybody's accusing everybody of lying. Truth is the first casualty of war. Over in Saudi Arabia, their Minister for State for Foreign Affairs yesterday condemned Iran's seizure of the British flag tanker in the Strait of Hormuz and urged the international community to take action to deter such unacceptable behavior. Any attack on the freedom of navigation is a violation of international law, Adel Ajabir said in a Twitter post. Well, again, freedom of navigation does have limits. You're supposed to stay out of other people's territorial waters, and you're supposed to follow the law of the sea. You're supposed to follow the rules, right of way and so forth. Not just a yeehaw, let's just sail our tanker in there and see what happens. Now, Saudi Arabia has now released the Iranian oil tanker they seized 2 months ago, and it is returning home with the entire crew. So this is Saudi Arabia walking their talk and saying it's time to back this down. So reports on Saturday was that the oil tanker named Happiness 1 had been released and was heading toward Iran's waters. Okay, and the big story, this one's dominating the news today here. Iran apparently detected and dismantled and arrested a CIA spy ring inside Iran's military. And they've sentenced some of them to prison. The military officers are sentenced to death for treason. Iran is now circulating their photos. Donald Trump was on the TV earlier today insisting, this is all a lie. This is all, the CIA doesn't spy on Iran. So apparently these spies were employed in sensitive and vital private sector centers in the economic, nuclear, infrastructure, military, and cyber areas where they collected classified information. This is coming from Iran's Ministry of Intelligence on state television. They had been working or covered as contractors and consultants, which is a very common cover. The British government has now issued a travel warning for Egypt, citing a heightened risk of terrorism against aviation, and British Airways and Lufthansa have apparently suspended flights to Cairo as a security precaution. This happened so fast, there were literally people at the gates waiting to board when they were told, sorry, the flight's been canceled. That's going to make a very unpleasant traveling experience here. So they're out there encouraging passengers to cooperate with security personnel. Down in Israel, Trump has congratulated Benjamin Netanyahu on being the longest serving prime minister in Israel's history, which, depending upon whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, may not be a good thing. Speaking of Palestine, Israel has gone on another demolition binge, if you will. This is coming from the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it's basically, there's an international criminal court case pushing for a formal investigation of Israel's demolition of Palestinian homes, especially in the town of Sur Bahar, southeast of occupied Jerusalem. And In a statement, the ministry said the Israeli Supreme Court rejected the Palestinian family's request to cancel the planned demolition of 16 residential buildings in the Wadi al-Homs neighborhood in Sur Bahar, which includes more than 100 apartments. Israel's justification for this right now is that these buildings are too close to the separation barrier. Now, Israel chose where that barrier was going to go, and they tore down a lot of homes to build it. But now it's the same thing we've seen before. We need a security buffer zone, and so we're going to push the Palestinians back a little bit more. The Israeli Supreme Court has also ruled that illegal settlers can continue to occupy 2 Palestinian homes in the West Bank city of Hebron while legal disputes have been resolved. Now, the settlers are claiming that the Palestinians sold the property rights back in 2008, and the Palestinian families are saying, no, we did not. All of this centers on an organization called the Jewish Land Redemption Fund Association, which exists to buy Palestinian homes wherever they can, and use them to help build the settlements here. So Israel's civil administration initially argued that the fund had legally purchased the family's properties. The family, however, contests these claims and stresses it never sold the rights to its properties to the fund. And apparently this is now the war of documents. And somehow I don't think they're going to prevail, even with all the proper paperwork. Okay, last Friday, the Gazans flocked to the fence for the 67th week of the Great March of Return. 74 of the Palestinians were injured in clashes with Israeli soldiers. We have to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take a phone call now from Don in Iowa. Aloha, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. Yeah, I would add another one to that list that Tom, not Tom, but Mark in North Carolina was talking about. Adam Green and some of these other pretty good shows. I would add Richie Allen of.
Yes.
He's a good one, and
Jim Goddard up in Vancouver. I'm doing his show after I finish mine today.
Right. There's some good ones if you if you kind of shop around. But Richie Allen, he had a good. He's got the Irish gift of gab sometimes, and I heard him say Bibi Netanyahu, he's got his hand so far up Donald Trump's arse that you can see his hand up next to Trump's tonsils.
Yes,
that's pretty far up there, But yeah, he's pretty funny. I mean, he won't mince any words about Israel either. I mean, the way I am, I like Jewish people. There's a Jewish American is the same as. In fact, I like Israeli people. I've met a few of them. But that doesn't mean that I think that Bibi should control the United States. That makes me mad.
Yes,
I start to get mad about
me too.
That. And it has nothing to do with the people. It's the religion. They did steal. After all, they did steal that land from Palestine. But a lot of countries steal land. But at times,
yeah, that's hardly unique to Israel.
Right. But you got to deal with the situation now. Why do we have to? It looks to me like the only reason we're attacking all these other countries in the Middle East is because Bibi likes it. That's what the AIPAC wants, and they're just bribing all.
Bibi certainly likes it. He wants Israel to be a regional power, and the way he's going to be a regional power is to basically balkanize the other countries and wreck them, like Iraq. They've already done. Iran is next, and I wonder if Saudi Arabia and UAE understand that somewhere down the road they too will be brought low.
Well, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we're America, though. Why are we doing this? I mean, it makes no sense. But it's the only explanation for every single one of these damn wars: Iraq, Afghanistan,
No,
And
there
now
are
they want to
multiple
go to.
reasons for the wars. You know, wars are never started for just one reason. Usually, you'll have a group of, interested parties, and they'll each have their own reason for wanting to go to war. But when you get enough of them together, it forms this critical mass, and the war actually begins.
Well, I'd like to see Epstein's tax returns. They talk about people's tax returns. What about his tax return? Oh, I guess he's intelligence. That's national security. We can't see his tax returns. National security because he was a pedophile pimp, and a blackmailer, but that's national security. No, it doesn't make any sense. The whole thing, this is coming to a head where something's got to give with this Epstein, unless he dies. And I think they got him under pretty good suicide watch. Something's got to give.
I would not be surprised if he were murdered right in prison. They'll come up with some kind of a story, about how he was depressed.
That would not surprise me a bit. No.
All right.
Okay, bye.
All right, Don, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And I just saw this bizarre commercial on TV, and I don't know why it struck me as weird. Apparently, Amazon has a new business they've started up called PillPack. And the way it works is that you basically send them all of your prescriptions, and they will send you back a box where each day's pills are in a little cellophane envelope. So you just tear it open, you swallow your pills, and you're done. And I think the reason that bothers me is this idea that Americans, when people around the world, in fact, are just on so many prescription medications. It's weird. It's weird here. Okay, getting on back to the Middle East. Israeli Minister for Regional Cooperation, Tsaki Hanegbi, actually came out yesterday boasting that Israel is the only country in the world that is killing Iranians. And he was doing a radio interview, and Hanegbi, who's also a member of the State Security Cabinet, said, for 2 years now, Israel has been the only country in the world killing Iranians. We have hit the Iranians hundreds of times in Syria. Sometimes they admit it. Sometimes foreign publications expose it. Sometimes the minister. But everything is a coordinated policy. So he's out there boasting, yes, we're killing. Well, that's part of the wartime mentality here. Okay. We keep hearing all this talk about hate crimes and how there's a hate crime crisis. And apparently there was this one report that came on out that made a big deal about threatening phone calls to synagogues across America. And see, it showed, hate is out of control. There's a lot of anti-Semites out there. As it turned out, all the phone calls came from one individual. Over a 6-month period, this kid, who has not been named, made all the calls from his room. And apparently, somebody was paying him in Bitcoin $250,000. Now, the calls were delivered to the victims through spoof telephones in America. Well, if it's just one guy, that's one hate crime. So, little hoax there. Up in Ukraine, the war talk is ramping up there as well. And apparently, they're saying it's try the Croatia scenario. Just shoot the Russians and throw them into the cauldrons. That's the kind of war talk that we're getting out of Kiev. And Kiev politicians are calling on Ukraine to take decisive action and stop talking about how Donbass cannot be taken by force. Boy, the world is just in a crazy place. Over in Hong Kong, China, major demonstrations, tens of thousands of people in an anti-Beijing government rally. And the initial protests started over this now suspended law that would have allowed extraditions to mainland China. But it's now evolved to a much wider movement calling for democratic reforms, universal suffrage, and a halt to sliding freedoms in the semi-autonomous territory. And as of the last report that was on Fox News, apparently they're turning violent, these protests. All right, speaking of protests and violence down in Puerto Rico, you're dealing with mass protests down there. Those started after 900 pages of homophobic and misogynistic text between a dozen influential Puerto Rican politicos were leaked by investigative outlet Centro de Periodismo Investigativo, according to Vice News. And you've got celebrities from the territory like Benicio del Toro and Ricky Martin led the rallies against the government, calling on the president to step down. Now, the president has already announced he will not run for office again, but he's refusing to step down. Unfortunately, things just got a little bit worse because another scandal has broken loose about how, in violation of Puerto Rican law, government contracts worth millions of dollars went to favored companies and cronies, breaking countless rules and regulations. So, what a mess down there. And over in Venezuela, there's been another incident of a U.S. spy plane whining that the jet from the country it's spying on got a little too close. So apparently a Sukhoi 30 fighter from Venezuela, they're describing it as aggressively shadowed an American spy plane over the Caribbean Sea. They're saying the jet was at an unsafe distance, and of course, because the jet came from Russia, it's Russia's fault. Russia's supporting Caracas, therefore it's their fault. And apparently footage of the Russian-made Sukhoi 30 approaching an EP-3 reconnaissance plane was released by the Southern Command on Sunday. They're saying this actually happened back on July 19th, but refused to say how close they were to the Venezuelan border, insisting only that they were in international airspace. All right, we're going to do another shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Talking about the economic news, a lot of people very nervous over what's going on at Deutsche Bank. As you know, they had some major reshuffling a little while ago, laying off a huge number of people. And they've got $1 trillion in assets under their management. And mainly due to self-imposed scandal, the bank is now having to take drastic measures to stay afloat. So, Deutsche Bank is considered too big to fail. But if it does, if it even stumbles, it could trigger another global financial crisis. The big ugly out there is that Deutsche has $49 trillion in exposure to derivatives. 49 trillion. Should have never allowed those things to be unregulated. All right, another story, this one from Investment Watch blog. The market is fundamentally and technically overvalued to an extreme. We have been saying that for a while here. And let's see how the markets did today. So, Mitsa. NASDAQ's up a little bit. Alrighty. Now, investment in the United States by China has plummeted by nearly 90%. And of course, this is tied up with that ongoing trade war between Beijing and Washington. And I mean, Trump has said no new tariffs on China, but that's hardly a solution. China's direct investments in the U.S. have plummeted by almost 90% since Trump was elected president. according to statistics by the economic research group Rhodium Group. So China's keeping their money at home. It turns out, we're talking about the student loan debt here, and for some reason, the debt is affecting women more than men. Women hold most college debt. And this women's group came on out there and said, well, it's sexism. It's plain and simple sexism. That's why these women are in trouble. No, it may just be that they borrowed more money, or they couldn't find a job to pay it back. It's a mess out there too here. All right, here's a very revealing story. This came out of Zero Hedge, and it's talking about Trump's border wall. And after 2 years of fighting with Democrats over border security, the Trump administration has replaced dilapidated barriers, but hasn't built a single mile of border fencing out in the open, unprotected sections. This is according to the Washington Examiner's Anna Giratelli. Not a single mile. Trump, you are a disappointment. What can I tell you? Now, apparently the Trump administration is considering implementing a freeze on the nation's costly and troubled refugee resettlement program, according to sources within the administration. I would be in favor of that. And they're saying a full refugee resettlement pause could serve to re-energize the immigration patriots that serves as the core supporters of Donald Trump's historic 2016 presidential campaign. Well, here's the issue. We already have a lot of refugees in this country that are already requiring financial support. So a freeze is a good idea, no question about that. But we still got to be serious about sending the refugees that do not qualify for asylum back home. So now you're hearing about the refugee program being shut down. And at some point, somebody's going to succeed in stopping the infiltration along the border. May have to be a state government, a state's governments, rather than Trump here. But apparently thousands of people are now stranded in Mexico with nowhere to go. They've run out of money. They've run out of food. They're stuck there. You know, they listened to the globalists about how wonderful it was going to be getting to America, and they've come up really short here. Now, Representative Jim Jordan, Republican from Ohio, turned to Democrats during a Thursday House Oversight Committee hearing, reminding the Selective Outrage Brigade, I love that name, that not one single so-called cage has been constructed by the Trump administration. All of those cages that are down there that are being condemned as concentration camps were built under President Obama's administration, and nobody complained back then. Nobody complained. They didn't say it was cruel or inhuman. They just flip-flop on all this stuff. And as you know, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is fighting tooth and nail to keep Republicans and Donald Trump from doing anything to solve the border crisis. However, a videotape from 2008 surfaced showing that Pelosi once supported the principles she suddenly now opposes. And she came on out and said, do we have a commitment to secure the border? Yes. What are the options that we have available to us? Let's make sure they work. Because while we need to address the issue of immigration and the challenge we have of undocumented people in our country, we certainly don't want any more coming in. That was before she realized that they could vote Democratic. Over in Rotherham, Great Britain, or actually the United Kingdom, and there are 3 brothers who were arrested for raping children in Rotherham quite a few of them apparently, they have been given £500,000 in legal aid funding to go to trial with. The victims of the rapes, nothing, nada. And so these three brothers are Arshid, Basharat, and Banaras Hussein, known as Madash, Bash, and Bono, pled poverty when they were being arraigned. But they run a gas station, takeaways, and an egg farm that supplies supermarkets. So these guys have got money, and still they're being given £500,000. Over in Venice, Italy, a 70-year-old priest was attacked and threatened by a group of young migrants who became physically aggressive toward him after he confronted them about their bad behavior. Don Roberto Trevisol, the parish priest of San Giorgio Martir di Chiranago, say that 3 times fast, outlined his experience in his church newsletter where he recounts how the migrant youths had constantly vandalized areas in and around the church. So how's that open borders multicultural thing working out for you? You know, George Soros has just messed up this planet really bad. Apparently up in Germany, there's a surge in violence against public officials over the fury over the migrant problem. And the mayor of Hockenheim, a city in southwest Germany, was hospitalized after an unknown assailant punched him. Amid a sharp rise in threats to the political elite, one politician has already died, and reports are that such attacks are becoming more common. Apparently, Dieter Gummer, a member of the notoriously pro-migrant left-wing Social Democratic Party, answered his door on Monday night to find an unfamiliar face outside. The visitor heavily punched the 67-year-old politician in the face, according to police in nearby Ludwigshafen. That's getting ugly. That is getting ugly. Okay, we have a caller on the line. Al in Canada. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Oh, you just mentioned George Soros is to blame for all this. No, he's not.
Well, he's financing a lot of it, but he's got a lot of other people who think a one planet, one central bank, one slab of cement is a good idea.
Well, anyone that goes along with the war agenda, especially after 2001, is to blame for what's going on right now. Anyone that supports the war agenda, period, going into other people's countries and mucking about, is to blame. You're not one of them, because I know that you posted just the other day something about if you want to stop terrorism, just stop screwing around with other people's countries.
Yeah, that's a coffee mug we sell over in our online store.
Yeah. So, it's easy to point a finger at one person, but in reality, it's a whole bunch of people. And,
I see your point.
Up here in Canada, there's no exception.
I'm hearing your point.
It's awful. It's actually, Mike, it's actually to the point now where it's disgraceful. It's actually disgraceful what's going on here.
Yes.
Because now laws are being created to protect these fringe groups. I don't mean just immigrants. I just mean like all these little fringe groups that the liberals seem to latch onto to gain more support for their silly nonsense that they're trying to foist on all of us. And I don't appreciate it, and I know a lot of other people don't appreciate it. We have an election coming up here in Canada, a federal election in a few months, and I'm hoping that like cooler heads prevail, and this nonsense comes to an end. But I have a bad feeling that what's going to happen up here is the same thing that's going on down in your country, where the left are just going to cry and start doing really stupid things.
Yeah, and you got to check those election machines, those voting machines. That's a big. That's
Well,
one of the areas in which I'm most disappointed in Donald Trump.
yeah, like in Canada, you're supposed to show ID when you vote. And last time I voted, which was provincially, no one asked me for ID. And I looked at the ladies and I said, "You're not going to ask me for ID? You're supposed to ask me for ID." And they just smiled at me. I said, "Yeah, see, this is how everything gets skewed because people
Okay,
that
Al,
don't live in this country."
Al, I got to put you
Yeah.
on hold. Got to take a break for commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I just got an email. I'm inclined to agree with Al from Canada. While Soros is at the top of the cesspool, there are too many people willing to do his bidding for a price, and far too many who consider themselves ideologues who agree with the ideas of globalization. Too many social justice warriors. I tend to agree with the saying, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. So, Al?
Yeah, that's basically how it works, I suppose. I mean, I'd love to have a one world government. It would solve a lot of problems, but we're way too immature for that sort of thing.
I
There's
agree.
too much greed. We have a monetary system based upon deception. I mean, everything is based upon lies and deception. It's all built on a bunch of BS. All of it.
Yes.
I mean, it goes. Mike, are you familiar with Zeitgeist? The original movie.
Yes.
I think 2006 or something. The first 25 minutes of that movie. I mean, that points the finger right at everything. Everything is built upon just a big lie.
Yes.
And no one really wants to come out and say, "Hey, this is why we have all these problems." You can't build, like any kind of substantial structure on a very weak foundation. It just doesn't hold up. So that's where we are.
Well,
that changes,
I've been saying for a long time, Americans are the most lied to people on the face of the earth. I really don't like the idea of a single global government. I don't think it would solve a lot of problems. In fact, I think for ordinary people, the problems would get much, much worse. I mean, when you look at the behavior of politicians just trying to become a senator or president, it's only going to get worse if there's a single throne of planet Earth. And what happens where inevitably we get a new Stalin or Hitler who gets that throne? There's nothing to basically counter that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we're just too immature as a species. We are too immature. I mean, it's maybe in 1,000 years, who knows? Assuming we don't blow each other up, which could very well happen in the very near future if these idiots playing these stupid little games over in the Middle East don't stop. It's insanity.
It is.
You know what, Mike? Here's the craziest thing. People will protest, about a little 0.001% of the population not being treated fairly. But when we're on the cusp of a war that could possibly end all human life as we know it on this planet, no one does anything. Now you tell me how that is not effed right up.
Well, if you look at corporate media, the only reporting they're doing on the wars is Russia's bad and Iran's bad, and they're not reporting on the potential implications if we actually get down to it. I think a lot of Americans are very much in denial. They know the wars are really bad, but they just cannot conceive that it would actually get out of control and that there might be nuclear weapons used. War always comes as a surprise to people. It certainly did here in Hawaii back in 1941.
Or so it was made to seem that way.
That's true. I mean, Roosevelt was definitely pulling a hoax on all of us.
That Rear Admiral, I can't remember his name. There's a video on YouTube on him, in front of the congressional hearing. If I had the information that Washington had, this never would have happened. basically what he said. But
Yep.
but it's just, you know, what's going on right now. I think this Epstein thing, it's not being covered by the mainstream media. Daily Mail is covering it ferociously.
Yes.
And but you know, it gets clicks, right? It gets those clicks, and the other, you know, obviously the mainstream media, they have other sources of income, i.e. the rich folk that actually run the place. So they're not going under. They don't really care. They'll just report what their masters tell them to report. Like I said, it's all built on lies. Russia used to be friends with the United States. They were, you know, Russia was going to come to the United States aid during the Civil War.
Yes.
Or, sorry, not Civil War. I'm sorry, the War of Independence. So,
actually, Russia did come to our aid during the Civil War.
Oh, well, there you go. So,
yeah,
you know,
we were all buddy-buddy
anyway,
in the Soviet Union.
Well, they use you, you use them. Like, not you personally, but, you know, the governments that run these places. And I'm almost at the point where now where I either think it's all going to come to an end or it's just all theater. It's like a big risk game.
Yeah.
You know,
all right, well, listen, Al, we're going to have to let you go. We got to take
Mike.
another break for commercials. We've got another caller waiting on the line, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Rick in California. Aloha, Rick. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Oh, we lost him. All right, well, gosh, he was just there. Oh, gosh darn. All right. Over at the Boeing Company, they're having some real problems. And there's this article out of Rumor Mill News written by Jim Stone that is really laying it out and saying that Boeing is either going to get woke or die. I guess get woke is the new euphemism for wake up. And the article basically talks about, we had a caller, I think it was a week ago, saying the same thing. It was the firing of the white male engineers and the hiring of the cheap foreign social justice worker labor. That's what doomed the 737 MAX. This could potentially kill Boeing. At the very least, it's going to maim it well into the future. And if the problems with the plane could be fixed, they would all be flying by now. It's been, what, a month? If they're not flying by now, it's entirely reasonable to say they never will fly. They're going to have to be scrapped and replaced. So, start looking for Airbus, I guess, here. All right, story out of uns.com here. The Boston Globe published an article inadvertently admitting that gun violence in America is exclusively a black and brown problem. White people very rarely are getting into gunfights, that it is confined within these communities, if you will. And of course, that's going to be fodder for the gun rights people to say, well, if it's the black and brown people doing it, why are you punishing the white people by taking the guns away? So apparently young black and brown people shoot each other disproportionately. That's where the urban violence is coming from. All right, speaking of guns here, apparently there's a major problem with suicides in the military. Whatever it is the military is doing to those recruits, it puts them under a tremendous amount of stress. There were 309 suicides among active duty troops in 2017, and firearms played a role in 202 of them. So now the military is considering a plan where the soldiers will not have access to their weapons unless they're out training or fighting. That the rest of the time, when they're not on duty, that the guns will have to be controlled somehow. That's pretty bad, because you'd figure if there's somebody who knows how to handle a weapon safely and correctly, it's going to be a soldier or sailor. Anyway, what can I tell you? My upcoming move to Indiana, there's a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. And like I said, this last weekend's yard sale really was an epic fail. So now I got to start giving stuff away here. But my timing really kind of sucks, because Hawaii just decriminalized marijuana possession. So darn. Now, Indiana has a very pro-Second Amendment attitude, and fireworks are legal year-round. And I love fireworks, I really do. When we first moved here to Hawaii, you were allowed to have fireworks on 3 days: 4th of July, New Year's, and Chinese New Year's. And then the whiners got going about, how the smoke is going to be harmful to the medically frail and fragile. And so for a while, you could still buy firecrackers if you bought a city permit first. And the permits cost more than the firecrackers, so they don't even do that anymore. Basically, you've seen party poppers, right, with a little string that dangles out the bottom. That's all we're allowed to have. That's all they trust us with. Anyway. Apparently on Friday, the House of Representatives voted 236 to 173 in favor of the Equality Act, which would require schools to include male athletes who identify as transgender girls on female sports teams. They're trying to make it a national law. This is the most insane thing I have ever seen. What is going through the heads of the Democratic Party? Anyway, the bill amends the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to make sexual orientation and gender identity protected characteristics under federal anti-discrimination law. It's just insane here. Alrighty. Apparently up in the city of Berkeley, which is a hotbed of radical liberalism, they have just passed a law to ban natural gas from new homes and businesses, including restaurants that use natural gas for stoves. Now, the environmentalists are out there saying it's a major victory. And what are you going to replace it with? I mean, supposedly 50 other cities in California are considering the same thing. No more natural gas. So what are we going to cook the food with, huh? Anyway, up in Oregon, students can now take mental health days away from school, just like sick days for physical ailments. Apparently, this was an idea of the students. They say it's not coddling. But apparently, if they get triggered or something, they get to stay home another day. Anyway, apparently allowing mental health days is meant to change the stigma around mental health in a state that has some of the highest suicide rates in the country. Okay, we're going to take a phone call now from Tom in Florida. Aloha, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good day to you, Michael. I can only talk a minute, but I just wanted to bring up a little fact. This Ocasio Cortez, whatever, Alexandria, whatever. Yep. I got an idea for her. Why doesn't she run for the governor of Puerto Rico She moved down to Puerto Rico and run for the governor because the guy's going to abdicate, I guess, soon.
Yes.
So I think she'd be a great governor of Puerto Rico. And the squad, whatever you call them, these people are they actually are, they're being un-American what they're doing. And
Yes.
this thing that they always say the people of color, well, that's racist in itself too, Michael.
Yes.
Think about that. That is a racist statement, the people of color. I mean, what kind of nonsense is that? That's a real racial statement. Now, getting back to, you're talking about the murder rate. I saw in the paper the other day, Chicago over the weekend had 9 murdered.
Yeah.
Last weekend, 58 shot. And the weekend before, my nephew told me it was 11 murdered and 63 shot. I mean, who's the mayor of Chicago anyway? I forgot. What is it? Man or woman?
Yeah, it's a guy. It used to be Rahm Emanuel, but they've got a new one up there. And
is it a man or a woman?
I have to be honest, I'm not aware.
I believe, I don't know if it's a woman or I don't know. It's like this guy Buttigieg just running for president. It's just mind-blowing. We're running these cities.
And
I wonder,
it's really interesting. I mean, Chicago's a Democratic stronghold. They have some of the most restrictive gun laws in the country, and yet they've got this sky-high murder rate.
The National Guard should be brought in there, Michael, and you know that. They should actually have curfew and bring the National Guard in there and let them confiscate whatever they have to do to get this resolved. But, getting back to Cortez and all these cronies in the Democrat Party, what do these people, talking about want to get rid of DHS? Why don't you move to Puerto Rico and see, what is this woman on drugs or something? How did she get elected in the first place? Because she's a pretty little Puerto Rican or whatever she is? I mean, I don't get it. I'm really perplexed with this case. She seems like a dumb dingbat, a dumbbell, and she's got a position like that, and the other one, and all these other ones that coming in here, the one from Somalia, it's unbelievable. And people elect them because they want their representation. Well,
or they were elected through election fraud.
We're not coming here complimenting this. Michael,
let's...
you had a caller the other day about agriculture, and that guy Art was wonderful. But you had another guy 2 calls before him, and I won't forget that guy. Well, we should have. No, do you know I found out, Michael, in the agriculture industry, there's only 1.7 million total men and women who work in the agriculture industry in the United States. So what about the 27 million that are here illegally that OAN's talking about every night? Every day on the hour, 24 hours a day, One American News Network talks about the immigration, show the figures, show the numbers, how much money it's costing the taxpayers. Every hour on the hour, One American News is running that clip about immigration.
Yeah.
So if there's 1.7 million in agricultural, Michael, what are the other 25 and 26 million doing?
Collecting welfare.
What are they doing? They're So let's look at that figure, Michael. Again, we'll say 25. We'll round it off. 25 million illegals from different Central American countries, even Africa and everywhere. Well, who's supporting these people? And they talk about the economy's going to belly up. It's going to belly up because you got all these people keep pouring in here, trying to take jobs away from Americans. I mean, the skill level, they don't have the language barrier. It's insanity. Michael, nobody's being held for treason. The mayors are telling these people when ISIS is coming to get them. You don't tell me that's a treasonous act should be held with capital punishment? That's capital punishment, man. They're invading the country in a slow invasion. You have a state's going to go red to blue in the next 10 years for sure.
Yes.
Michael, California was called the land of milk and honey in 1988, 89. It was the 15th largest economy in the world. I was there. I saw it all.
Yes.
I saw the transformation of California. They had signs all over, billboards all over. They said California, the land of milk and honey. Imagine that.
Yep.
1989, 90, 92. I used to go see my brother, and they had signs all over Orange County, in Costa Mesa, and Thousand Oaks. I would go up there. They had signs all over the roads, the land of milk and honey. You couldn't get a Republican as a dog catcher elected there like Ronald Reagan. Who's kidding who? You talk about a massive conspiracy, and who's behind it? And you got this broad in Sweden. What's her name? Barbara or something? That schmuck. You got a schmuck woman in there. Well, I forgot her last name. Maybe you can help me with that, Michael. She's promoting. They should be hung for treason against the humanity of the world. You know what, Michael? There's no countries without borders. There's no country in this world that would be a country if it didn't have borders
Yes.
and its own cultural identity. And these liberal swine get away with all this nonsense. It's got to come to an end. That's all I got to say, Michael.
Okay, well,
You have a
before you
great
go
show.
here, Chicago's new mayor is Lori Lightfoot, and
Okay, that's
she's
right.
a woman.
Light.
She's black. She's a lesbian.
Is she an Indian?
Say again?
Not an Indian name.
Could be.
Lightfoot? Stranger in fiction. I mean, what's going on in these cities, Detroit, how it's, Michael, we've already talked. I've talked you over there, and you're wonderful. You got a great show. Detroit, we won World War II because of Detroit. Look at it. It's in ruination.
Yes.
Trying to come back. I mean, the houses were built where they could withstand a Category 5 tornado. And they're tearing them all down. They called them brick crap houses back in the 60s. Or they made a song, Aretha Franklin, built like a brick
Yeah,
house.
I remember.
They were built so wonderful, those houses back in the 20s, and I mean that's how powerful those houses could withstand storms. Or it'd be unbelievable, especially if it's a madhouse. But Michael, the squad, whatever. To me, they're so anti-American. They're treasonous. I mean, the whole Democratic Party. You got that Joe Lion Biden, who's
Yes.
I call him China Joe. He'll give if he gets elected, Michael, he'll give the kitchen sink to China. He'll
Yes.
give everything to China. Look, why isn't Mueller investigating his son that stole billions of dollars from China? How come that ain't on the news every second? All they talk about is Trump, Trump, Trump. Oh, Trump collusion. This Russia collusion is such nonsense. It's beyond belief. It's pitiful. It's squalor what they're doing and trying to do, these low-life demon rats. All you hear, let's look at the guy trying to get the economy straightened out. Yeah, he's maybe, now they're saying he didn't even build a mile of wall. You have a couple of news networks saying, oh, Trump hasn't even built 1 mile of fencing, a wall. That's a freaking lie, Michael.
He's replaced a lot of the dilapidated fencing down there, but apparently there has been no new wall construction.
Well, Michael, Donald Trump, I agree with you on a few things. There's some things I don't like his tweeting a lot, but there's some things that Trump does agitate me about. And the biggest thing I called your show a couple months back, was when he did not tell the federal government, the feds, the FBI, to go arrest that woman mayor in Oakland for dropping a dime to tell the illegals that they were coming. That's when Donald Trump just said, you're arrested, you're going to federal prison until we can resolve this.
Yep.
When you got a mayor acting rogue in this country, not following the laws, federal guideline laws, and she's getting away with telling the illegals that the feds are coming, and nobody, she didn't get even slapped on the wrist, Michael. Well, I have a beef with Trump on that. I really do. I'm very perturbed with Trump on that.
Trump is a disappointment. What can I tell you?
He'll be the commander-in-chief of the Allied Forces, and he's the president of the United States, and he's not allowing the feds to go arrest rogue mayors like that. There's something going on in Washington that's got to be fixed.
Okay, Tom, we're up on another commercial break here, so
Bless you, Michael. Thank you.
all right, we'll be back in a few minutes. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, one of the foundations, if you will, of liberalism is this idea that our minds are totally blank at birth, tabula rasa, which all came out of that Margaret Mead nonsense. And a lot of this gender identity basically plays into that, saying that you're neither male nor female the moment you're born, that in fact your idea of maleness or femaleness is imposed from outside by the culture. And that is, in theory, a bad thing. But interestingly enough, BBC Two did a documentary called Animals at Play. And basically it involved some baby baboons, some male and some female, and a room full of toys. And the male baboons opted for the trucks and the airplanes, and the female baboons picked up the dolls. So it does tell us that gender is in fact hardwired into us, or at least into the baboons. And there were experiments like that going all the way back to the 70s with human children, where they would put they would go on in and basically try and encourage the girls to play with the boy toys and to encourage the boys to play with the girl toys. Didn't work. We have a gender that we're born with. Deal with it. Okay, over in Champaign, Illinois, a gentleman named Tom Lord basically woke up to find that a window on his truck had been smashed in and the word Antifa scrawled across the back with red spray paint. Now, Tom Lord is a Trump supporter, and Trump supporters are getting attacked. And it's a sign of how our society is starting to fragment. It really is here. Okay, I have long said that computers are good, computers are fun. There are some things that need a computer, like the Apollo spacecraft, and there are some things for which computers are a little bit gratuitous. And apparently Pampers has joined Huggies in selling smart diapers. And Procter & Gamble has announced they'll start selling their the diapers in the fall. And unlike the Huggies line, the Procter & Gamble Pampers will only track pee, but they will also track the baby's sleep patterns. Okay, we'll talk about this more when we come back from station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And so we're talking about this latest application for cyber technology where Procter & Gamble's Pampers disposable diapers are going to be made smart. And they will track when your baby urinates and the baby's sleep patterns. So they're calling it the Lumi. And Pampers says it already has a wait list ahead of the U.S. launch this fall. It includes an activity sensor that secures to a landing on the front of the baby's diaper. It comes with a baby monitor and a 10-day supply of diapers. The sensor works with a corresponding app to log the kid's pee and identify patterns. Additional packs of Lumi by Pampers diapers will be sold separately. Pricing has not been finalized, but I expect it would actually really be kind of up there. So Procter & Gamble is pushing the idea that parents using the Lumi diapers will, in theory, not have to worry about checking any of that because they'll get smartphone alerts. And the app will display one of 3 diaper statuses: dry, wet, or very wet. Now, growing up, I had 2 younger brothers, and I got to spend a lot of time with them. And as I recall, they made it pretty obvious when the diapers needed to be changed. Didn't need a computer to track that for us. So, like I said, you know, computers are nice, computers are very cool, but not everything in our life has to be computerized. I don't need a computer in my coffee pot. Okay. Apparently out in California, in Silicon Valley, there is a new law. It's got a lot of support, bipartisan support. It's called the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, or SESTA, and would amend the Communications Decency Act of 1934 to specify that tech companies like Google will no longer be shielded from liability for sex crimes committed on their platforms, specifically against underage children. Now, Google is not happy about this. Google and the other tech companies, they're making money from this activity. SESTA would allow for state attorneys generals to file civil action against Google and other tech companies on behalf of the residents of their respective states. So now Google knows what it's like to get deplatformed here. Story out of the Sydney Morning Herald. And basically, they're criticizing the tech giants here in the United States. They're under fire in Washington. Well, so far I've seen a lot of talk. I haven't seen anything happen. And right now, the censorship, this controlling of what we're saying to each other, that's very dangerous. It's more dangerous than bin Laden. So, and again, I think the court set a precedent when the court said that Trump couldn't block people from tweeting on his Twitter channel because it was a public forum. I think you could say, well, the argument could be that Facebook is a public forum, or YouTube is a public forum, or any of them. Alrighty, over in Israel, there's a technology company, NSO Group, and it was briefly in the spotlight when it was revealed that its software products would have been used to hack WhatsApp and spy on Android and iOS phones. Now, the spy program developed by NSO Group can gain access to user data from Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft servers. Now, the Israeli firm has consistently rejected allegations of hacking or spying, but it's never denied the development of such technologies. So it's kind of like standing there and saying, well, yes, we've created all this powerful spy technology, but trust us, we're not using it. Again, over the weekend, we were all remembering the Apollo 11 landing. It was also the anniversary of the landing of Viking 1 on Mars back in 1976. And interesting story on that one, because there was tremendous pressure coming down from Washington, D.C. to land the Viking 1 on the bicentennial, July 4th, 1976. And unfortunately, couldn't be done. Couldn't find a suitable landing site. So they called back and said, we'll land it on the 20th and we'll link it to Apollo 11. That's ultimately what we did. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Over in India, they're on their way to the moon again, this time to the surface. And the nation's robotic Chandrayaan-2 mission launched on the 22nd from the Satish Dhawan Space Center, rising off the pad atop a geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle Mark III. And it's taking a long, slow path. They figure it'll get to the moon about September here. All right, we're going to take some phone calls here. Doug in Thailand. Aloha, Doug. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Aloha. I'm calling in this anniversary. You reference, hard to say where to begin. You remember the movie 2001?
Yes, that was the film that convinced me I wanted to be in visual effects.
Yeah, it was quite a thing. It came out sometime after the moon landing. In the crater scene, they find the thing, right? Well, something to it with satellite technology at that period when they first got a chance to look at the planet from the sky and what these things show up, a few strange items. In Thailand here, there's a national park in the Ratchaburi province, west of Bangkok, not that far, 100 kilometers. There's these cages built in that park, and they have an English sign, and from that period, it says dangerous dangerous animals inside. Keep away, you know. Anyways, I was there during the coup d'etat. I had been taken out physically by guys who grabbed me and threw me in an ambulance and removed me from my job as a university teacher at Rajabhat University up there in Schaumburg, Ratchaburi. That's like a little town with 7-Eleven. Anyways, I ended up in this park on a motorcycle before the coup a couple of days, and there's all these soldiers going around, and there's like cranes and flatbeds and signs put up on the road. There had been all kinds of new roads put in around. I would go out on my bike and looking around the whole area, and I was like, what's going on? These guys building paved roads here and there, these little hills. Well, something was going on, and it changed the government. I called in, and I got somebody in Washington telling me, yeah, well, during coups d'etat, there are resource grabs quite commonly. and what is it? You know, this stuff, it's like it's got some property. It's not that. But I've been working on this for 13 years. What it is, this stuff can just like jump. I don't know. I've seen boats jumping across the water. I've seen cars or vehicles somehow change their orientation of how they can move.
Okay. Are we going somewhere with all of this?
Yeah, I'm just trying to say there might be something positive. There might be a connection to what somebody did know about something that would be on the moon in a crater, because it's stuff that caused the formation of those hills, those famous cliffside hills that you see around Thailand. There's this substance that has another property. It's like whoever controls that stuff is going to have another huge. They're trying to hoard it. I mean, it's a natural resource. I'm sorry, it's magnetic. It's like it locks to its position. It doesn't want to move. It's super heavy, and then when you move it I don't know. We all got locked up. The whole. I don't know what you think of this. Sorry, don't want to trouble.
Well, it's been a little bit hard to follow along with where you're going with this. Anyway, Doug, thank you for the phone call.
The anniversary. I never get a chance to tell people there's this other magnetic resource from meteorite strikes that caused the formation of hills down here pre-formation time. There are chunks of it on the surface. Somebody knows about it, and they're trying to get it, and it's been going on for quite a while. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. All right. Well, Doug, thank you very much here. We're going to let you go. The iron-type meteorites, the siderites, they can be magnetic, obviously. They make very good knife metal. In fact, they discovered one of the swords buried with Tutankhamun. The blade was made from a meteor. So remember the Bowie knife? Jim Bowie's custom-made fighting knife? That had a meteor in it. Okay, so let's get on back here. It's actually a warm one out here today. Okay. All right, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. All right, there's more coming on out here about this study that was done in Finland, which basically said that man-made climate change is completely fake. That the effects of humans on the climate are virtually indetectable. And this study was done at the University of Turku, and they said that the contribution of humans to global temperature increases over the past century is negligible at best. So they're estimating planetary temperatures rose about 1/10 of a degree Celsius over the last 100 years, but human activity contributed only about 1/100th of a degree Celsius. Basically 10%, 1/10. So it was a hoax. It was this, they created a crisis to try and sell you a new policy, sell you a new tax, trick you into letting the government control more of your life. And anytime that somebody says there's no such thing as wide-ranging conspiracies, point them right at that climate gate. So now, that being said, it has been hot on the mainland this last week. It's starting to break. And they're saying that this was our hottest June in several years here in Hawaii. But again, overall, we do seem to be heading into a new Maunder minimum. And I think we're going to see some very cold weather in the future. Fine time to move to Indiana. What can I tell you here? All right, so let's talk about chloropyrifos, or pyrophos. Rented lips. Chloropyrifos. Chloropyrifos. I got it. One of these times I'll get it. And this is another case of me being disappointed with Donald Trump, because this is a pesticide that has been shown to harm a child's brain even at low levels of exposure. And apparently it's legal to use. Farmers can keep using it. So with a court deadline looming, EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler announced its decision to allow chlorpyrifos to continue to be used on conventionally grown food crops like peaches, cherries, apples, oranges, and corn. The chemical is not allowed for use in organic produce. Now, last April, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled unanimously that the EPA had to decide by mid-July whether to reverse the Trump administration's overturn of a scheduled ban on chlorpyrifos. Now, the ban has been strongly supported by a lot of scientists, including a lot of scientists within the EPA itself. So they were going to have this ban, and Trump overrode it to say, yeah, go on spraying the stuff that damages children's brain. Go ahead and keep spraying it on the food product. Now, I think it's a betrayal of the American people. It's a betrayal of our health, certainly. And I know Trump did it because somebody who makes that company, you know, was a campaign supporter. And just give me a second here. I wonder if it's a fine product from Monsanto. Okay, organophosphate pesticide used on crops, animals, and buildings and other settings to kill a number of pests, including insects and worms. It acts on the nervous system of insects by inhibiting the acetylcholinesterase enzyme. It's a product of Dow Chemical. All right. Interesting little article here. And this came out of the Bolin Report. And it's talking about the anti-vax movement and how fast it is growing. And obviously there's well-funded constant assaults by big pharma, corporate media, but public awareness is growing that these vaccines may not be safe, they may not be effective. This year's flu vaccine is totally non-effective because a new strain of flu popped up. But we're getting skeptical and we're taking care of ourselves. And we're coming to the realization that, yes, as that pesticide story illustrates, we live in a country where toxic and dangerous products are sold to us for the sake of a fast buck. And that if we're going to keep ourselves healthy, we have to take charge. Okay. Little bit of a story. Apparently, over in New Jersey, two of Trump's supporters were having a wedding, and President Trump just decided to show up, which I'm sure was a thrill there. The New York Times is now admitting diversity makes you poorer and less safe. Tell us something we don't know here. And let's see. Apparently they had some destructive thunderstorm winds across Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. That was over the weekend. Oh, here's an interesting little story. Apparently, North and South Korean soldiers are now shaking hands at the border. I think that's a very, very positive sign. And everybody's talking about this video of Representative Tlaib losing it at a 2016 Trump event. So Trump is supposed to be, you know, the angry, irrational one. Okay. A lot of stuff about Apollo 11 out there. Okay, we got to take another break for commercial breaks. Please join us on the air. We'll be back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I got a name I want to add to that list that Mark started. And his name is Ryan Christian. You probably know him from The Last American Vagabond.
Yes.
And I had a video on one of his sites, and it showed Trump rally. He was going around campaigning, I guess, and it was outside, and he was talking on the podium. And this senior citizen got up, and he said, "I'm really against all these wars for Israel and the Middle East, and I know they're for Israel." And then he sat down. It was kind of quiet. And then Trump's response was, "Israel's our best ally, and we're always going to be by Israel's side," and all this. And he got a big cheer from the rest of the audience. And I thought, how disheartening that is to me. You know, all this time I thought people were waking up and, you know, finding out what's really going on, but that kind of blew it all for me, you know. But anyway, I wanted to share something about the comment you made about Netanyahu wanted to take over the Middle East, and I disagree. I think he wants to take over the world, and he wants to rule it all from his empire between the Nile and the Euphrates River, and make Jerusalem the head of the world, and he the emperor of the whole world. That's just what everything points to that, Mike.
Well, and, he's running out of time to get that done. But you know, if Netanyahu is able to control the Middle East and the Middle East oil through that oil, he'd pretty much have a lock on the rest of the world.
Exactly. It's the same philosophy as if I control the money, I don't care about their laws. I don't care about anything else if I can control their money. You know, it's the same philosophy, right?
Yep.
And the last thing I wanted to say was I read this thing about Colorado State University. They came out with a bunch of things that were proper and not proper on the campus, and one was, don't use the word America or American, because too many people be offended from the rest of the world. And, you know, they came up with a thing about, you know, don't use he, she, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, I don't believe that's from Colorado State. I believe somebody's telling Colorado State what to do. And that's what we should be concentrating on. We should find out who is telling, you know, work this thing way up back to the source. And
I would agree here, because frankly, if you can't stand the name America or American, why are you even here in the first place?
Yeah, I know. But, you know, this is a transition to the New World Order, obviously, right? You can't say America. So you can say the world. You won't have to offend anybody, and everybody's included, and we're all mixed in, and the regime in Jerusalem calls the shots. You know, if you don't like it, we're going to go to a socialist world, and if you don't like it, we'll just cut off your food. Because, you know, we're giving you the vouchers through your little chips in your skin through to eat. And if you don't go along with it, or you complain, or you say anything that's offensive to us, your food's going to be cut off. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I mean, we all realize we're heading toward a dystopian future, and in fact, we seem to be on overdrive getting there. And the problem is when you have people who just love being in control of other people, yeah, they're going to come up with new ways to control. You're right, we're losing a lot of our precious freedoms and rights each day that goes by.
Yeah, and that's the problem with socialism. Socialism means that you have a government regulating body that controls everything. And if you don't play their game, they're just going to cut you off. And then you're going to suffer. You know, you're submitting yourself to them. You know, that's what my idea of socialism. If you got our other system, you know, we got more autonomy with ourselves, and we can go out and work and do what we want to do. We support ourselves. But once you go to this, I'm dependent on Social Security. That's socialism.
Yeah.
But I don't want my whole life ruled by it, you know, and that's why I think we got to go to the source on these things, you know, with that thing at Colorado State. Somebody told Colorado State what to say, and who was that, and who did they tell, and what was their threat, like cutting off donations to the university or whatever.
Well, it's probably somebody out in California, because that's where the whole political correct liberal, you know, stuff comes from. And yeah, it's probably somebody on a university out there, maybe UC Berkeley, and they say, "Oh, this would be cool. Let's share it with our other universities across the country." But it really is. First of all, it's not useful. You're not going to get a job with it. You know, as the word police. Anyway, listen, Terry, got to let you go. Got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. And Aloha America, welcome back to our show, and we're going to take a phone call from Bob in Colorado. Aloha, Bob, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael. It's been a few months since I've talked to you, but
Yes.
listening to the show, and I tried calling you a while ago, but it was just, you were so backed up with calls. But about this social score, if you really think about it, TransUnion and all these companies that back in the 60s started doing our score, that was part of the whole agenda. So now, when we get used to having a bad score because our credit card was bad or we didn't pay it or something, of course our score goes down and insurance and everything else goes up. So we technically are already in that system. But when it goes full-blown...
You mean like they have in
China? People are going to sit there and think the same thing as a credit card.
Yeah, like they have in China.
Yeah, right, exactly. And this is it's been going on for years. You know it, Michael. I listen to your show for years. And you know what they've been doing slowly. It's like the frog in the water. And slowly, you know, they took away all the interest for credit cards and the cars. And then we had to get used to, and now we're almost to where they're going to take the interest away from mortgages. And now we're in this credit score thing. Insurance goes up, and it is like they are already scoring us. And every time you go to get a credit card, your interest rate's like 40%, and your insurance rates go up. I get a thing. I live in Colorado. I get a thing every year that my credit isn't that good. So, of course, it goes to the insurance company, and now my rates are up. I mean, they're squeezing this out so bad. And one more thing, and I'll let you go. I don't know if you know, but there is a big, big push. And I live in a little town down here in Colorado. There's a big push to get Polis out of office because he has totally screwed this state up since he's taken office. God bless you, Mike, and I'll listen to you off air.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bob. Here, we're going to let you go. The phone lines are now open. And apparently the White House and Congress reached a deal to lift the budget cap again to the tune of something like, was it $320 billion. So they get to go on out and buy more stuff. Now, supposedly, starting tomorrow, Donald Trump is implementing a fast-track deportation system that bypasses immigration judges. So, again, nice if it actually happens. But at this point, we elected a leader, not a tweeter, and Trump's tweets do not represent leadership. In fact, I don't even bother reading them anymore. Apparently, Venezuela just got hit with another massive blackout, and it's impacted at least 18 states, including the capital, Caracas. This has caused chaos for the transportation system and disrupted phone and internet connections. Okay, I wonder if it's another hacking job. Now, one of the areas in which the gender benders like to play is to remake movies with the opposite gender character. And I think a recent example of how that can go bad was the feminized version of Ghostbusters. Had an excellent cast, so-so script. Mostly it was a rewrite of the storyline from the very first one. And it did not do well at the box office. People just had a certain expectation. Now we're hearing talk about a female Spider-Man. And apparently the next Marvel Thor film will star Natalie Portman, not as the scientist role she did in the first one, but as Thor herself. And a lot of fans were reacting in anger, saying, this is not what we expect here. We're buying a book about the Thunder God, the God of Thunder, or we're buying a comic book about the Ghostbusters, or about Spider-Man, and getting this gender bender stuff kind of shoved down our throats. It's a little bit upsetting. Somebody once asked, what's next, a female He-Man? So I'm predicting that the film will not do very well. And maybe respond to the wife. All righty, let's see. We've got a caller on the line. Bruce in Texas. Aloha, Bruce. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, aloha, Mike. Hey, Mike, what are you going to say when you move to Indiana? Have you come up with anything yet?
Not really.
With aloha?
I may just stay with aloha.
Okay.
I don't know what they say in Indiana.
It's your trademark. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I don't know, gentlemen. Start your engines. I don't know.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. Hey, go to that race, by the way. I don't know if you've ever been to the Indy 500 or not, but it's amazing. I mean, to be around 250,000 people, and then just the sound, and even if you're not really into motorsports, it's just an experience. You gotta check it out.
Well, I was when I was young, and as Claire keeps telling me, once we move and get settled in, that we're probably, going to discover there's all kinds of fun things to do around there.
Maybe I'll meet you there.
Maybe.
Yeah. Hey, with your the call before the last one, mentioning about Netanyahu and controlling governments through through oil.
Yes.
Just think about this. What was Stalin's? Was it Stalin's quote? Who said, "Doesn't matter who votes or how they vote; it's who counts the votes."
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, have you heard about Microsoft Election Guard being located in Israel?
I'd heard about it. Yeah, I've heard about it. I get very nervous when Microsoft, the company that gave us Windows 10, is involved in our election process.
Right. Yeah, I do too. And so you also have the Federal Reserve, of course, which was the first neck in the news. So we're going to have basically Zionists controlling our money and our politics and our oil and counting our votes. That's pretty disturbing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I'd put that out there.
Well, I think we need to go back to counting votes the old-fashioned way in front of human witnesses, because, you know, computers can be programmed to put out pure garbage, and
Exactly.
they do it so fast we can't see it.
Yeah, it's been, you know, with the Hacking Democracy, that's come out, 10 years ago or so?
Yeah.
Yeah, so have you ever noticed that all the quote-unquote despots that in regimes that we want to overthrow are elected, and they have paper ballots, like Maduro and the Syria's leader, I forget his name, Assad?
Yes.
So, yeah, isn't that funny? Anyhow, I thought I'd put that out there. I'll let the next caller come in.
All right. Well, we don't have an caller yet, but thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Now,
Okay.
on that issue of election fraud, and I know a lot of you have already read this, but I think it's worthwhile. On the main page at whatreallyhappened.com, in the upper left, in that little gray box with the permanently linked articles, there is one, how to have honest elections. And I'm not saying the system is perfect, but I think it would be pretty hard to cheat this one on a scale enough to swing, for example, a presidential election. So, but we got to do something, and Trump campaigned on fixing the election system. And he dropped the ball on that, turned it over to the Department of Homeland Security, which so far seems to have done nothing. Was going to try and take on vaccine safety, gave that to Robert Kennedy Jr., whom the corporate media is now ignoring as hard as they can. This country's a wreck. It really, really is. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. Apparently up in Alaska, they've discovered that quite a few of the serving police officers are convicted criminals. That's got to be kind of a wake up there. Another horror story out of Child Protective Services. Autistic child kidnapped by state ends up in CPS system before being trafficked. That's another area where Trump was supposed to be making our nation better, was dealing with a lot of this trafficking here. Okay. We already talked about the mental health tale. El Chapo is on his way to Colorado, to the Supermax prison there, where he will spend the rest of his life. Maybe. He's already escaped jail once. And somewhere out there, he still has a lot of money. More celebration about Apollo 11. And let's see, is an armed society a safe society? That's a paraphrase of Robert Heinlein, who wrote in a couple of his books that an armed society is a polite society, which tends to be true. The nicest, most polite people I've ever met were all in the gun stores. Okay. Sorry for the long pauses, but I'm trying to find some news to report because I ran out here. Okay, apparently the U.S. has botched a propaganda video accusing Russia of violation of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. And apparently the video accused the U.S. accused Russia of developing a missile that was banned under the 1987 Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. However, the missile system shown in the cartoon was perfectly legal and completely different Iskander-M. Whoopsie. Little bit of a whoopsie there. Okay, article here. Did Iran seize the British tanker to avert an invasion? I don't think so. I think they were risking one there. Little bit of humor. The Democrats' 2020 campaign slogan is "Americans suck, vote for us." All right. We've got, let's get a couple of phone calls in here. Just three more phone calls to get us out of the show. So 800-313-9443. Meanwhile, the U.S. spends more per pupil than any country in the OECD, but spends it badly, lagging behind many countries in core competencies. Is it a conspiracy to keep the population dumb, or just another example of government waste? I'd say it's probably a combination of both. Okay, thank goodness we have a caller on the line. Raleigh in Minnesota. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike Rivero, you've covered a lot about the drag queens reading to children at Drag Story Hour, and you've touched on a lot about the gender bending in comic books. I don't know if you've heard about the all-ages drag show that's being held at Mile High Comics once a month that has toddlers dancing for dollars in front of gay grown men.
Yeah, I had heard about that.
We've actually been doing street protests on ground, and the organizer to that event, Kenny Bartholomew, is a good friend of mine, and I've actually had him on my show personally, and it is deplorable. It's disgusting. They actually have the police there not moving or budging an inch or batting an eyelash, seeing grown, fat, huge, slob men come grab kids with their rainbow umbrellas to block from the camera going into these clubs. There is so many cars out there. It's ridiculous. And there's a lot of adults going there with no children.
Well, I think anything that exposes children to this kind of an environment, I think they're too young. They're simply too young. And I don't agree with it.
You can't take children to titty bars, and there's a reason for that. And they need to stay away from that. There needs to be a parallel society between adult perversion or adult lifestyle, if you will, versus being a child, because children need time to be a child.
Yes.
They should be outside.
I agree.
They should be playing sports. They should be collecting bugs with their mom and dad, making campfires, sharing stories. They shouldn't be lip singing to Frozen and wearing fishnet stockings and exposing themselves up their legs to grown men and dancing on the floor itself. It's degrading. If we don't do anything, they're going to be dancing in cages before you know it. And how long until they give lap dances?
Well, I'm in agreement with you. It's an atrocity, and it shouldn't be happening.
Absolutely, Mike, and we are going to be protesting again. I'm not going to be on the ground, but I'm going to do a lot more in my home state of Minnesota, or I should say adopted state. But August the 25th, there's going to be another protest. We'll be there with V from Vendetta Mask.
Okay.
Kenny Bartholomew will be leading the protest. If you want to get involved, if you live in Colorado or Minnesota, you can contact either me, Rolly Quaid, or Kenny Bartholomew. And I hope this is dear to your heart and you're willing to make a stand about it, because nobody else will do it unless we do it here at RBM. And other news sources.
All right, well, listen, Raleigh, good luck with that. I got to let you go and take a commercial break. We're going to be back with another phone call after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. We're going to go back to the phones to Jim in New York. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mr. Rivero. About this thing about the transgressors and all that kind of stuff. In Scripture, I know you don't relate to Scripture that much. I heard you say that. But in the Old Testament Scripture, there are two specific commandments that Jewish people have to follow. One of them is that a man shall not wear a woman's clothing, and one is that a woman shall not wear a man's clothing or wear armament on her body, like carry a pistol on her side. Now, those are two things. Now, also, with regard to the transsexual operations that people have, there's also a commandment in the Old Testament against castrating any living thing, including animals and birds. And that would preclude a Jewish doctor from performing a transsexual operation on a man. But, these aren't the reasons I actually called. I want to tell you why I really called. You're familiar with the South, the American Southwest?
Yes.
The territory that the United States took in the Mexican War ending in 1848. And Mexicans try to reclaim that land even though they signed a treaty. Some Mexicans, they call it Azteclan.
Yes.
California, Colorado. Okay. Now, I want to get to something very fascinating. The Inquisition, and I know you relate to that because I think you said you had some family that were persecuted by the Inquisition.
Yes.
So, the Inquisition actually reached in the 1600s and early 1700s. It reached into Mexico and into what is now the American Southwest. And Mexico was called New Spain. And I happen to have a book by a professor who's now deceased from the University of Miami. It's documented heavily, especially from
we got about 2 minutes to go, Jim.
Okay, I'll get it. The Inquisition, that Jews were actually burned at the stake in Mexico City in the late 1600s. Not a lot, but a few. These were not the Mexicans we see today who are indigenous people, basically. These were the actual European Spaniards. Now, there was one man whose name was Luis Calvajero, and he was actually a general. Okay, I'm not going to go into all the details, but there were a lot of crypto Jews. Some people call them Marranos, etc.
Yes.
There were a lot of crypto Jews in the American Southwest, and they would do people well. They probably researched this. And look up even just to get started under Wikipedia under crypto Jews. You find some fascinating topics and links.
Okay, and the point of all this is?
There are a lot of people in the American Southwest who are actually, they would be actually legally Jewish people, but some of them realize it and many of them don't. There was a girl in the University of California, Colorado.
Okay, I see what you're saying, but we all have an ancestry of one sort or the other, and some people know about their ancestry because they research it, and others really don't. So, anyway, listen, thanks.
There's no motive in this, just a point of interest.
Okay, well, your point of interest is taken, Jim. We're going to have to let you go because we are at the end of our program. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and at the website. Share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.